Year 13, this lesson is going to centre around planning an exam style response, which I will ask you to write in Thursday's lesson. So you will need copies of Top Girls and your poems for this lesson, and we're just going to work on creating a plan for an exam response that we will write on Thursday. Just a quick note on the exam. So paper 2, just like paper 1, has 3 sections. Section 1, you're going to answer a question on the Handmaid's Tale. Now this paper can be a little bit confusing because Mr. Pease and myself chose 3 texts that were named texts for section 1. So for section 1, you ignore the question on feminine gospels, ignore the question on Top Girls, and just do the question on the Handmaid's Tale. Then you'll go through to section 2 where you'll read a piece of unseen prose and answer a question on that. And then section 3 is what you've been working on with me. That's your comparison. It won't name the texts that you need to compare, but you will be comparing in section 3 Top Girls and feminine gospels. So this is a genuine exam question from a past paper. You will get a statement about modern literature, and then you'll have to compare your 2 texts based on that statement. So today's question is, in modern literature, insecurity is shown to be a condition that profoundly affects the lives of ordinary people. Now, a good thing to do at this point would be to identify the key word that names the theme that you will be exploring. So the key word here is insecurity. So we need to base our answer on the idea of insecurity, and we need to think about how insecurity is explored by the writers, by Duffy and Churchill. And then you're asked to compare the significance of insecurity in 2 other texts that you have studied. Remember to include in your answer reference to how meanings are shaped in the text you are comparing. So the question actually asks you to consider AO2 in particular, how the writers have shaped the meaning, meaning what methods have they used. It's a good idea at this point to pause the video and write down the exam question so you have it there to refer back to throughout the lesson and on Thursday. Off you go. Okay, wonderful. So this question is worth 25 marks. Again, it's marked in the band system that we've got quite used to, where we'll read your essay and we'll decide whether it fits into band 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. 5 being the highest, and then within that we decide what mark you have out of 25. To get into the higher bands, you must consider coverage of all of the assessment objectives. So this time, I'm going to take away some of the support that I've given you before. I'm not going to give you your 3 big ideas like we have done previously. I'm not going to go through specific parts of the text and ask you to focus on that. And I'm not going to tell you which poem. You should focus on at least 2 poems from Duffy's collection. But this time I am going to give you a thesis statement. So we will all have the same thesis statement in our general specific thesis introduction. And this is going to be the thesis statement that we're all going to work towards arguing for. It would therefore be easy to argue that writers explore the way that challenges presented by the modern world result in insecurities that manifest in their characterization. So this is a good thesis statement because the paper is called Modern Times. So the examiner wants you to be considering how the context has shaped the text. So by making reference to the modern world or modern times in your thesis statement and your introduction, you're already ticking some boxes for the examiner. So I would like you to consider how you can build in those words, modern world or modern times, into your thesis statement in all future essay responses. By saying as well, manifest in their characterization, I've already made a nod to the writer's methods, to how the writer has created these characters to explore the way that the modern world creates insecurity. So rather than talking about the characters as real people, as if Marlene is a real person, I have shown that she is a construct herself, constructed by the writer to explore these ideas of the modern world and how it manifests in insecurities. So I would like you now to pause the video again and write down your thesis statement, probably under the subtitle thesis statement, so that you can focus your response on developing that line of argument. Off you go. Wonderful. Okay, I am going to talk you through some of the possible things that you could explore in your essay. I'm not going to give you key quotations or anything like that. I would like you to find your own, to think about the methods used by the writers in order to explore this idea of insecurity. But I have thought about which characters and the characterization of these constructs that you could focus on. So the obvious choice would be Marlene. Now, Marlene is undoubtedly an insecure character. While she appears externally as being very secure and confident, we know that she has insecurities because of Churchill's use of non-chronological order. And at the end, we see her crying, which shows that there's some sort of sadness that comes as a result of her decision. Now, I think one of Churchill's big ideas here is that the modern world that presents women with a choice between either a career or a family and adopting that more traditional role of the past creates these insecurities. So Marlene is insecure because she's had to sacrifice family, relationships and things like that, but equally it's created insecurities in Joyce and also Mrs. Kidd, who have both adopted that more traditional role. So I think the big idea here is that the modern world presents women with a choice and that they can't have balance, and that creates insecurities. Mrs. Kidd is quite a good character to examine here because of how much she apologises for herself and creates and how Churchill creates that dichotomy between her and Marlene through things like when she says, I know office work isn't like housework, etc. I think also Angie is a character that embodies a lot of insecurities because she's unsure of what the future holds for her, as a character that may not have the choice to follow the same trajectory that Marlene has followed. That's undoubtedly going to create insecurities for her. And I think the ending would be a good part to explore in terms of looking at Angie's characterization and how she says frightening, and how that links in with Churchill's big idea that the modern world can be quite frightening for women because of the choice that they have to make. So those are just some quick ideas. What I'd like you to do now is pause the video and think about what you would like to focus on, which characters you're going to explore and examine, what big ideas about insecurity there are in Top Girls, what parts of the text would be interesting to look at, and spend about 5 minutes having a plan, having a think about how insecurity is explored by Churchill in Top Girls. Off you go. Okay, so then we have to explore the poems, the Duffy poems. Now, I have pulled out 4 poems that I think deal with the ideas of insecurity. It's up to you to choose which poems you're going to use in your exam. It's probably too much to write about 4 poems. You probably want to do 2 or perhaps even 3. 4 would be too many. So you're going to have to choose and select from this list, or I'm happy if you've got an idea for a different poem as well. I'll talk you through briefly how I think insecurity is explored in each of these poems. So in Beautiful, the women have to attach themselves to powerful men in order to gain true power. Their beauty gives them some degree of power, but ultimately their power is linked to their relationship with a powerful man. I think particularly in the Marilyn Monroe section, ideas of insecurity are explored through Duffy's explanation of how Marilyn Monroe tried to put on a mask, this outward appearance that everything is fine and everything is wonderful, but she hints at the idea that there's insecurities there through the idea of masking, this putting on makeup to hide what's underneath, through this idea of how she uses pills and booze and coffee to medicate all of those inner feelings of insecurity that are going on. Now, The Woman Who Shopped and The Diet are both good ways of exploring how insecurities are created by modern life. So both of those characters feel a lack of fulfillment, which leads to their insecurities. The diet in particular explores the way that there's a lot of pressure on women in the modern world to look and appear a certain way, and that would be quite good to bring in your context, your contextual knowledge that we looked at of the changing expectations on female appearance. Do you remember when we looked at icons like Marilyn Monroe from the past, where the curvy shape was very much in vogue and desirable, and how that changed to this very svelte, slim figure in the early 2000s, and how that creates insecurities, how the media representation of what a woman should look like in the early 2000s put a lot of pressure on women and created further problems like eating disorders, and undoubtedly explores those insecurities created by media body image in her poem The Diet, and how the woman can't slim enough. The Map Woman, I think that's quite an interesting one to compare with Top Girls in terms of insecurities from the past. So both Marlene and the woman in The Map Woman try to hide their past and mask those insecurities created by their past. So again, just like you did on the last slide, I'd like you to pause the video, spend 5 minutes, name the poems you are going to write about in your exam response, and then think about how Duffy, so what methods Duffy uses to explore insecurity through her poetry. Off you go. Okay then, so what I would like from you from this lesson, this is just a short video with just some bits for you to do, but what I would like you to submit today is a plan for your essay. I would like to see your plan with the thesis statement written at the top. I'd like you to have planned your 3 key lines of argument to develop your thesis. So the lines of comparison, or the big ideas explored in relation to insecurity through the texts. So you'll have your thesis statement, then you'll have 3 key big ideas that you'll explore. I want you to choose your 2 poems and write them down. And then I'd like you to decide on the parts of both texts that you're going to explore relating to the big ideas. Then I want you to think specifically about AO2, because that's our class focus at the moment. So decide on key quotations that you plan to use and what you will do with them. By that I mean write down a quotation that you think is interesting, and then make notes on the methods used and how that links into and explores the big idea. Write down your relevant context that you're going to explore. Write down any critical quotations or interpretations that you plan to use. And then I'd like you to email your work to me or submit your work for discussion. Now this will give me a week before you write your essay next Thursday, or just about a week anyway, to have a look at your plans, to identify anything that I think you need to add, which I can then discuss with you and help you to create a really successful essay. In terms of how you're going to organise this work today, if you want to, you can write down each bullet point and write your notes down underneath. I think that will make it very clear for me to see how you've planned to develop your essay, and that will be wonderful. If you want to, like we've done in the past, create boxes with each of the assessment objectives and write down notes in each, that would be fine as well. But by making sure that you've done every single one of these points, what you should end up with is a plan that will help you to write an essay that will cover all of the assessment objectives. So spend the rest of this lesson now planning your exam response. Please do remember to email or submit it to me as soon as you can, so that I can give you that feedback and make sure we're ready to go with a really successful essay. Okay, that's everything from me today, and happy planning.